Intent is a mainstream strategy. Say that again. Intent is a mainstream strategy. That resonated with me because the second slide in my presentation is we use Bombora for literally everything because it is at the center of our strategy at Snowflake. I lead a team of about 20 individuals in North America, 30 globally, all dedicated to account-based marketing. And we fuel our fire using Bombora and using multiple versions of intent. So I'll give you a little preview. We use Bombora across our prioritization, determining which topics to talk about, understanding our subsidiaries that we want to work into, and beyond. So I'm going to dive into all of this here in a few minutes. But to get started, I want to show you our infrastructure of how we do our account-based motion at Snowflake. You'll notice we have collaboration over on the left. I was brought into Snowflake specifically to work with the SDR organization. It was very well integrated with sales, zero integration with SDRs, so those are sales development representatives. And so that has been my focus over the last 3.5 years, is integrating that motion. The challenge is, you'll see at the bottom, we have more than 230 SDRs now, and we're serving more than 1,000 sales reps. Together, we're serving more than 5,000 accounts in North America and 9,000 globally. So it's one thing to have an infrastructure, it's one thing to have a process, it's another to do it at that scale with that many people. It's essentially herding cats. So I'm going to walk through this with you. When you look at this structure and this flow, you see the start with collaboration and you see the end with optimization. The problem is when people start off on their account-based journey, most organizations start here with activation. Right? They hear ABM as a buzzword. I know there was a naysayer on the stage about ABM earlier, so you are now my John, or whatever that sales guy's name was. I'm going to convert you by the end of this conversation to one team go-to-market. But most companies start here with activation. They see it as a trend. They see a need in the business. They run, they jump, they go. And then I get a phone call somewhere down the line or a LinkedIn message that says, Hillary, it didn't work. We hired an agency. We never got off the ground. We have no results. The problem is you can't be successful with activation if you don't start with collaboration. But why do people not collaborate? Why don't they have these conversations? Because you can't do collaboration if you don't have intelligence. And this is where Bombora comes in for us, as well as a lot of other data that we work with. We have to bring value to the sales development org. We have to bring value to the sales org in order to create that back and forth trust that builds collaboration, so that then we can activate and get to engagement. And this is where we focus on the outbound motion, the inbound motion, and the optimization of that as well. So before we move on, because I'm not going to touch on this later, I want to say one thing about optimization. If you're running an account-based motion, the optimization should be focused on accounts, not leads. So if you're being asked to measure leads and a lead funnel in an account-based approach, stop what you're doing and rethink and think backward to what your goal is. I'm going to move on here to talk about the next evolution of this, and that's one team go-to-market. So that structure that I showed you is something we've been doing for a few years at Snowflake, and I've had several conversations with my colleagues about, should our title be ABM? Are we doing something else? Is it AB blank? Is it ABX? Is it AB nothing? I don't know. What is it? And we made the decision this year, and if you claim your free copy of the book, you can learn all about it, that what we're doing at scale is, in fact, one team go-to-market. We're bringing together the multiple different parts of the go-to-market team and activating cohesively into the accounts that matter most. So what does that actually look like? We're going to get some definitions out of the way here. First, account-based. Account-based is a strategy. It's how you go to market. You've heard account-based sales, you've heard account-based marketing, you've heard account-based intelligence, you've heard account-based everything. We're defining that as a strategy. And then there's a team. I lead an account-based marketing team. My team is responsible for the coming together to execute that strategy. Now what we're saying is that one team go-to-market is the unified, scaled strategy and execution of an account-based approach across go-to-market teams. This is when you start to really see the power and the impact of all of your teams coming together and having a consistent message to the accounts you're going after. Now, I'm a proud San Diego State alumni, so it's nice to be back here in my home Aztec turf. But one of the things I learned in my advertising classes at SDSU is that any consumer needs to see an advertisement at least 3 times before the message resonates. We're all doing multi-touch, omni-channel advertising here in our B2B roles. So if they're getting different messages across the different channels and different touch points, you're missing that opportunity to get those 3 or more touches and really have your message resonate. So I'm going to talk a little bit about account prioritization as the foundation and the starting point before we get to the messaging. ROI is top of mind, and choosing the right account is the most important factor. I got a question on LinkedIn a few weeks ago that said, Hillary, what about the bias of the account selection and how that impacts your results? And I was like, yeah, that's part of my job, is to pick the right accounts to get the results. So I don't care if it's bias. That's part of my job, is to get those accounts into the hands of the salespeople and get the right message out to them. So we had to make a few shifts in order to align to this data-driven account selection. And this was a few years ago we started this project. We're fully fledged rolling now. But the first is a strategic shift from proactive, or to proactive, as well as responsive. So when I joined the team, every sales rep got to choose 10 accounts for account-based marketing to focus on. Now we say, no, you can have 3 to 5 accounts that you choose, because there's some reps that only have 1 account or 3 accounts, and you just got to go after them, whether it's time or not. And then we're also going to add a responsive layer. Now, this is not reactive. I don't want my team reacting to sales or reacting to the market, but we want to respond to the signals. So we have created space in our strategy to say when an account surges and shows interest through intent, we have a play ready to go to activate as one team, as one go-to-market team. We also are focusing on this timing of signals. So we hear our sales reps say all the time, X% of the buying cycle is done anonymously. Pretty sure at this point, multiple RVPs have just made up numbers to really punch that point home. But there is actual data that more than 60% of buying cycles are done anonymously. When we talk about building trust with the sales team, with the marketing team, coming together, you have to be able to provide value that they can't get without you. Intent is one way we do that, is we're crossing that chasm, and we're saying, hey, we can help you get insight into that 60%. Right? We can help you understand who's engaging. And then lastly, simplify workflows. So it's one thing to have the data, it's one thing to know what you're going to do with it, but it's a whole other thing to actually do it and actually get it off the ground at scale. So we have simplified our workflow into what we call a 1-2 punch. After that collaboration component, ABM activates their campaigns, our campaigns. Within 2 weeks, the SDRs start their outbound motion. Now, we're actually working on automating that so that the actual contacts are retrieved automatically after the intent signal. They're throttled into the outreach sequences based off of the SDR capacity, how many contacts, how many accounts can they work in any given day, in any given week. And we're helping make that process easier. So simplifying workflows is so, so important in order to get this thing actually moving. So what's it look like from a data perspective? At the end of the day, I do work for Snowflake, and we are all about data and bringing that data together. So I want to show you an example here on the screen of how we've brought one view for our go-to-market teams into Salesforce. So we bring all of our data into Snowhouse, which is our own use of our product of Snowflake. We visualize it through Tableau, and then we embed Tableau into Salesforce. So this is right where the sales teams are. One of the speakers talked about making the process flow with what already exists. The sales team's already going to Salesforce. So on this screen, you can see all of our data pulled together. The different bars indicate accounts that are pre-opportunity, open opportunity, and then customers. And then we pull in on the left-hand side our first-party and third-party data. So we use visitor insights to understand who's visiting our sites, what they're looking at, what pages they're looking at, and then we combine that with our fit data as well as other engagement data to create an MQA. All of our AI and ML models are in-house, so we have our own score with what I'm told is a very high accuracy rate from our data science team who has done all of the back-end work for this. But what you see here is not just a dashboard, it's actually what we call an action board. So you'll see the modules. My colleague Travis and I wrote the book together, sat down in a room in San Mateo, and we went through all the different modules we could put on this action board. And as we put them up, we talked about if sales looks at this dash, what are they going to do? And if we can't answer that question, it's not going on the action board because it's not actionable, right? So I don't know about you guys. There's a lot of dashboards out in the world where you're like, that's really interesting, but now what? So this is our action board. I want to call out a few things. First are the red lines. So these accounts are sorted by the intent or by the MQA score, marketing qualified account score. If the line is red, that means that an SDR has not reached out to them in the last 14 days. So if you're a one-team go-to-market org, you can sit down with your cross-functional counterparts and see Red, go talk to those accounts. We actually do have an actionable button in there as well where they can load them straight into Outreach and go from there. And if they're green, they have been touched in the last 14 days. So we're good, and we want to make sure we're staying in touch. So in the end, this becomes an aggregate of our known and anonymous data to help us close that chasm that we're talking about with that 60% of buyers that are engaging anonymously. But what do you do next? So we know which accounts to go after. We know that the SDR has or has not touched them. But then what do you say, right? We come up with a message that's cohesive across all of the touch points in marketing and sales, complemented by our demand gen team as well. So you can see the second module here is the list of account intent topics. Eventually, this will be incorporated into the MQA as well. The second module will also stay, but we want to continue to improve our model. So here on the intent side, you can see the different topics, again with the red and green marks. But we look at it for, is there a line of business that's surging that we may not have realized? Is there a competitor that's surging that we may not have realized? Did we sort by customers and realize they're surging on something that's indicating churn? All of these signals come together into a conversation with real humans, no AI involved, and we sit down and talk about the account. Salesperson, what have you talked about last with the account? What have you seen? What public documents have you read? Is this consistent with the data that we're seeing here, and how can we use it to augment the narrative that goes to this account? So the narrative that we develop, just to be clear, is not permanent, because once we get more data, we'll continue to develop that narrative over time. And this is what it looks like when it's brought to life. You can see on the left an advertisement for Comcast. At first sight, you might say to my ABM naysayer out there, wherever you are, Hillary, that's just an account name slapped on an ad. You're like, yes, it is, but that's not it. The copy right underneath of it, get unlimited data access for faster decisions, is specifically crafted for Comcast based off of the intent and other data that we have about what they're looking for. So yes, it should feel very natural for Comcast. It should not feel creepy, just like if you're going on a first date, you don't reveal that you've done all of the research online before you go, but it feels really natural. But we also extend the personalization into the graphics. So you'll see a media graphic in one of the Snowflake arrows, and you'll also see an individual who represents the persona that we're targeting for this specific advertisement and this specific play that we're running together. It's also going to affect event invitations. So the topics that are surging for Comcast will determine if they get invited to some field marketing events. It might determine if we do a one-to-one event for Comcast as well. It's also going to go into sales messaging. It's going to influence the SDR messaging. And it's going to influence the content that we put on the custom landing page created for Comcast. So you can see when I say we use Bombora for literally everything, it is the foundation of how we're doing this. But that's not all. There's been a lot of talk today about spreadsheets. And I am here to reinforce that point, because we were paying a lot of money for a vendor at some point in time to create custom content. And a brilliant team member of mine, Bree Gowell, who has been at Snowflake since before my time, came up with this idea to say, we don't need a fancy vendor. We need a spreadsheet in InDesign. So we actually take the surging topics from visitors' insights as well as the surge intent scores, and we have a spreadsheet in Google Sheets. So I guess it's not Excel, it's Google Sheets. We've modernized a little bit. But there's drop-downs, right? What are the competitors? What is the tech stack? What are the intent topics surging? And we have pre-written and pre-approved through legal different snippets of copy to go into a one-pager. One time a week, we export that spreadsheet, we mail merge it together into our one-pager, and we now have a custom piece of content that matches the intent of the account that we're targeting. So for Comcast, they're going to get a custom one-pager. This goes back to building that trust and adding value with sales, because sales is going to get a PDF of it as well. They now have a touch point to reach out to the account in a meaningful way. It's on our microsite for ABM, and it's also being sent out by SDRs. That's three touch points of the same message up to the same company around the same time. That's where you're going to get this multiplication of impact. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the SDR side. This is not fully my wheelhouse. This is why I have a co-author of the book. He is the absolute expert in this topic, but a little preview for you. This is how we craft our SDR touchpoints. So you can see at the top the subject line. We have done research about the CIO in this case and what the strategy and priorities are for the company that we're reaching out to. Well, we're not reaching out to the CIO, we're reaching out to the individuals within the organization who are responsible for bringing that strategy to life. We start with a hook really quickly. We know what you're looking for. We know who you're what you're wanting to talk about. We follow by the value proposition. Next, the call to action. So very succinct, very focused on what we want to get across. And we do this across multiple touch points. So I'm here to tell you the phone's not dead. Just because I don't answer my phone when SDRs call doesn't mean that everyone else doesn't answer their phones. No, but when, like somebody else was saying, right, if you're looking for a solution and somebody is calling with the answer, you're far more likely to have a conversation. And that's the goal, is that we make advertising and account-based approaches and go-to-market motions really effective. So you can take a look here at our sequence steps. This will also change over time. So while the steps might stay the same, as we get more information and more data, we'll continue to adjust the input into what goes into these different touch points. All right, and that takes us to one team go-to-market optimization. In order to have your teams working seamlessly together, you have to know what's not working. And that's the hardest part. We have what we call family conversations or family meetings where we sit down with the SDRs, with the SDR managers, with the AEs, and talk about why something didn't work. And it stinks because you have to sit there and talk about all the things you did wrong and where things are falling short when you think you did it all correctly from the start. But while painful, it's important. But it's hard to have those conversations if you don't have the data to back it up. So I wanted to share this with you because this is a new dashboard that we just came out with that has been an absolute game changer in how we work together as a one-team approach. So this is what we're calling the funnel fallout dash, and it's very, very simple, and that was my requirement when I requested this from the marketing intelligence teams. Like, I don't want fancy graphics, I don't want any fancy charts or comparison over time, I just want a funnel and nothing else. So the top line you can see is the number of accounts targeted by the ABM team. That's important because it needs to align with what we agreed upon from that original list from collaboration from when we started. The next is how many are engaged. So I want to talk about this for a second because I hear a lot from different organizations when I'm advising and taking different consulting calls that we don't have the technology to create an engagement score. We don't have the data scientist that Snowflake has to create an MQA. That's fine. All this engagement is that there's been 20 or more page visits to the custom microsite. That's all. So for you, if you want to get off the ground, get your pilot running, you can choose what that threshold is for you. It might be one campaign responder from the account. It might be something different. It might be an event attendee. But determine what it means to be engaged. We've decided that we don't want SDRs spending time going after accounts unless they're engaged, because there's plenty of them to spend their time on, and it's not efficient to go after cold accounts. So after that, we get down to SDR touched. And this is where the rubber really meets the road. So this section, you can click on it, and it'll pull up every account that has been engaged by ABM but not touched by an SDR. So this was made for my team, but we have found, we walk over to the SDR pit, and lo and behold, the SDR directors have this up on their screen because they're using this for accountability. But what's also important is this little section right here, this tiny little orange. Those are accounts that have been touched but are not engaged. So that's where we get into the coaching conversation of why are we spending our time going after accounts that are not engaged, they're not ready to talk to us, but yet we have a gap of, say, 100 accounts that are sitting there ready and they're not touched at all. So this becomes that really important key piece in having that collaborative conversation in the optimization side. Now, before I move on, I want to talk about one more thing that you're going to have to use your imagination for, because my creativity was struck right when we were going through the earlier part of the day, and I couldn't add another slide in time. But I was reminded when the Bombora team was presenting the graph that had the nice flow of the different intent topics. My team actually has taken that and used that for optimization as well. So they're pulling up a specific account, so we'll use Comcast as an example, and what are the topics that are trending over time, and then they're just going into PowerPoint or Google Slides and taking a dotted line on dates and saying at this date, we launched this campaign. This date, we had a webinar. This date, we did whatever else. The outreach started from the SDRs. And they're actually coordinating to see that there's been a spike in intent behavior after we've launched our program as well as before. So you can see a really nice swell of that peripheral buying committee engaging those different lines of businesses, those different legal departments and finance departments and everybody else that's coming in on the buying cycle. And it's been a really good way to go back and validate what we've been doing and that it's actually working. So just wanted to share that in case it's helpful for anybody else. So how do you bring this to life at scale? This is our essential go-to-market play. So we suggest a list of accounts to sales, or they suggest a list to us. A few quarters ago, we had a region decide not to take our list of accounts or take our suggestions. At the end of the program, they had a 17% meeting rate, and all of their peers had a 46% meeting rate, and nobody has taken the option to not take our lists anymore. So we suggest a list, and we work together to pick a topic that works. The account-based marketing program is launched. We wait 2 weeks. Like I said, SDR launches their outreach, same people, same time, same message. And then we finish that up with what we call our flurry. And the flurry is our end-of-quarter motion, where when SDRs and sales are trying to hit their quota at that very last few weeks of the quarter, we thought, well, why start on a whole new set of accounts if we've already spent a quarter going after accounts that have shown intent? So we take the actual email addresses of the individuals who have not responded to the SDR outreach, and we put them in an ad campaign to a gated, high-value piece of content and hope to convert them into an SLA. When we do this, you can see the actual hockey stick on the graph of the completed meetings at the end of the quarter. So this is how we're kind of taking a zero waste or sustainable, because we're at a sustainable event, approach to how we're working with our teams. So I'm going to bring you back to this original infrastructure. This is a slide that we talk about a lot, and it hasn't changed from the beginning. It's the same columns, it's the same graphics, but the point of this is that as we nail down this process, this one team go-to-market motion, you don't have to reinvent the wheel. You simply start replicating and changing out the content based off of the different data you have available. As you do that, you can apply it to a different team, you can apply it to a different segment, you can apply it to a different region. Then you can start intermixing those to really create this motion at scale. Obviously, you can also swap out tactics. You can put direct mail, you can try billboards, whatever works for you within this motion. But this is how we scale. So I want to give you an idea of how this comes to life at Snowflake. These are our top 3 programs. We actually have 5 tiers in total now with ABM. With one team go-to-market. It's a little lingo change for me here as we evolve. But at the top, you see what's called Snowcat. All of these are named, obviously, after snow terms because we're Snowflake and that's what we do. Snowcat is that big tractor that goes through really difficult territory in the snow. And we named it that because these are accounts that we have to get into, right? We've got to bring out the big vehicles. They're RVP nominated, and they only get 5 for the entire year. And those 5 stay the same the entire time because we need that time to get into the 200 subsidiaries that are likely associated with that account. And we bring in all different teams. So we bring in the partner marketing team, the field marketing team, obviously the ABM team, SDRs, sales engineering, you name it, we're all going together after these accounts, and we're measuring success by opened opportunities within that account and within different lines of businesses. We're also starting to measure newly engaged people. So who has been in our database but never responded, and they're now becoming a first-time campaign responder. The next is snowball fight. This one is like you literally pick up snow and you throw it at a very specific account. That's where that comes from. This is what we call our digital one-to-one. The 10 accounts per AE that I mentioned earlier that now get 3 to 5, that's this tier. This is our kind of standard tier that we focus on open opportunity accounts. These rotate every quarter, highly informed by intent, but they don't have to be. So that's up to the AE to decide. And then the last tier is our snowmobile. And this is our bread and butter of our program. This is kind of what the book was born out of, is the results that we've seen from this. And it is almost entirely focused on intent. This is where we're going at the DM level, saying what is a cohort of accounts that we can talk to at the same time with the same message and essentially provide the same impact as traditional one-to-one has, except for do it at a much bigger scale. And this is mostly just the ABM and SDR. Obviously, we work with AE as well, but we typically don't bring in the other cross-functional teams until later on. So what are the results? When we follow this one-team go-to-market motion, we're seeing 2 to 4x the SDR completed meeting rate. So that's calculated, not by leads, of course, by the total accounts targeted versus those that have completed a meeting after the targeting. We also see 3x campaign attendance. So that means that if an account is not targeted by our one-team go-to-market motion versus if they are, they're 3 times more likely to attend the event after registering. So it's comparing registrant to registrant. We also see a double, or half the time, 2x faster time from open opportunity to closed won, meaning that we're able to also focus on deal acceleration, post-opportunity plays with the sales reps as well. And then lastly, that 2 to 4x meeting rate I was talking about, we have achieved a 36% meeting rate That's completed meeting rate in our one team go-to-market accounts across our entire team this quarter. So that's our most recent number. When we started this process, the average was about 10%. So if an SDR reached out to 100 accounts, they'd get completed meetings with 10 of them. Now, if they reach out to 100 accounts, they'll get completed meetings with 36. Their process has not changed much. It's just becoming a lot more efficient and intelligent with how we're going to market as one. But it hasn't been all smooth sailing. We have had plenty of lessons learned. It's really hard to get a lot of people operating as one. So we have started small, just like the other speakers have said. We're focused on one team, focused on one SDR, one field marketer, and getting us all moving in the same direction. It also takes a lot of iterations, painful conversations, and data has to be your compass and North Star. So when you're following the data, the intent data, the engagement data, you name it, that helps us make a lot more progress. Also, start small, optimize, and scale. I rolled into Snowflake, hot off the press, ready to roll this out across the entire organization, and it was not well received because that's not how you do things, apparently. So we start small. I learned my lesson. Got to really optimize before we roll out more broadly. Next, we're going to do automation, like I mentioned, and we are actually doing a really cool project that hopefully I'll talk to you guys about in the future with data-driven partner selection. So I'm working with my colleague, Saka Mustafa, who runs partner marketing at Snowflake, to understand our named account list. What are they surging on? Which partners are they surging on that maybe we aren't prioritizing? Or which accounts or which partners are we prioritizing that nobody is surging on? And kind of leveling those out and understanding where the investment lays for our partner marketing organization. And then lastly, deeper combination of first and third party intent. I mentioned our MQA score. We're working really hard to get that all integrated into one, as well as getting the de-anonymized data from Bombora, from Visitor Insights, into our views as well. So we like to say a snowflake, be like a duck, calm on the surface, but always paddling like the Dickens underneath. So that's kind of our mantra. And if you'd like to know more, we wrote a book about how we do this, and this is intended really to be a playbook. So while it is Snowflake-y and has examples from Snowflake, it is not a sales book. It is not a hidden Trojan horse of marketing in that way. But it's really focused on the actual activation. So what is the trigger? What is the play? Minimum viable for a startup versus scaled for an enterprise. What are the different technologies you need? When should you buy them? When should you not? What's your why? Start to finish. So everybody in the room, I would have given you a book today, but they do not exist yet. They're landing in the warehouse June 12th and publishing July 11th. So if you scan, thank you. Thank you. So if you scan the QR code, put in your information, I will get you a book as soon as I have them in my own hand to send out, and would love to connect with you guys on LinkedIn, as well as my podcast if you have any more questions.
Okay, thank you, Hillary.
Thank you.